Anytime I say hey like that, I think of Drew Afualo.
Yeah.
Hey! I can't do her laugh. I wish I could do her laugh.
I can't even
But, like,
imitate
that's
it.
a classic cackle.
I would love to have Drew on the podcast one day. We are, I would say, giddy.
We are certainly going to get into the kikis of today.
Oh, for sure.
As you can tell, we have an extremely special guest, like extremely. And
you're going to love her.
Ugh.
We say that every time.
Yes, but we did share a little bit of our cup with our guest. However, how are you today, sister?
I am having a time.
Oh, yeah.
I'm having a time.
Okay. Please.
I am just feeling fun and fancy free. I think that I'm an ambivert. I don't think I'm a full extrovert, but I love being around people. I love getting to flirt. I love the social, like getting in the Scooby-Doos of it all, like not in a gossipy, like weird way. I don't know. I love the chismosa, and I'm getting a lot of chismosa at my new job, and I did not think I would enjoy it as much as I do because it's a service job, and it's been a very long time since I've worked in that industry, but I'm having fun.
I love that. I can attest.
I'm sowing. Is that what it's called? Sowing my royal oats?
You need to sow your royal oats. Yes.
So yeah, I'm just having fun. I am taking what the universe is giving me and seeing where I end up. Amen. And is it scary sometimes? Yeah, but I know that things are going to work out. And you guys, I'm trying to hold back some things, but there are some fine ass men at my job, you guys. And it's so fun. I have not been in a place where I could just like flirt, because I was working at Sephora for a really long time, and 98% of the men that work at Sephora are gay. Not that I can't flirt with you and kiki and have a good time. And then the rest are all women. And then another job that I had, because it was a very religious setting, it was very like repressed. So it's just so fun. I feel like 21 again. You know?
Yeah, I think you needed that.
I really did.
I think you needed that.
It's really fun, but it's with my current self and current knowledge and maturity, which is nice. It's not like I'm going back to my 21-year-old self. I feel that liveliness,
right,
and free spirit.
Yeah, the brain is still very much where she needs to be, but the body is like, oh, but we can have fun here.
Yes.
Let your hair down a little bit.
Yeah. So that's what's in my cup. Fun.
Good. Yeah, same. I am actually enjoying the pace at which I have things going on at this moment in time. I'm halfway through the semester. It went by really, really fast.
Do you have finals coming up?
No finals. I think I only have one final.
Midterms.
Oh, no.
Nice.
Not for these classes. They're so very chill. Nice. I have 2 super chill professors, and that really allows the growth to actually learn things instead of just trying to adhere to deadlines, which I don't really subscribe to anyway, because I'm a Capricorn, and what's time? I rule time. I am time. I'm Saturn. And so really that's just it. I like the pace that I'm going at. I am loving learning and just loving where I'm at and taking the challenges as they come and listening, actively listening to a lot of things in my life. People, myself, the environment.
We're taking it in and we're processing.
We are.
And we're responding.
We are.
We're making moves accordingly.
That's the difference. Yeah. It's like you can listen all day, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. What are you going to
do
about it?
What are you going to do about it?
You guys, you can tell that we...
Cheers.
We really are having a time. And it's a good one, always. We always have a good time, but things just feel lighter.
I did want to shout out, however, my cup, if you're watching on YouTube, for my What's in Your Cup today is a custom made. It was a gift from my brother's girlfriend's sister. That sounds made up. But my brother's girlfriend's sister has a Cricut machine, and she sells these cutesy little cups on Etsy. If you're listening rather than watching, it says Mama, 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 which I actually really love. And shout out to Caitlin. I don't think that Caitlin knows this, but I love this. And I didn't even request it. This was actually just a gift. Mama, Mama, Mama is a part of a book called Please Baby Please.
Yeah.
Written by Spike Lee and his wife, Tanya. And throughout the whole book, they're asking the baby, please don't do this, baby. Please don't do this, baby. And I read it with my daughter all the time, obviously. And at the very end, the baby gets out of bed and goes into the mom and dad's room. And the baby says, kiss me goodnight, Mama, 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 please, Mama.
Oh.
Yeah. So near and dear, my favorite color as well, purple. So yeah, I will have to send this to Caitlin because I don't think Caitlin knows that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
If she's still selling, I'll link the Etsy. Yeah.
Yeah, link her shop. So that's what we're showing up with. Did we already talk about who our guest is?
No, we just talked about how excited we were for her.
We have the honor and the pleasure of having Denise Soler Cox on our podcast, and it was just serendipitous, if I have anything else to say.
Mm-hmm.
She is really leading the movement about being Ẽnye, which you will learn what that means if you watch her film. We'll link that too. Her entire message is about being enough, and that you are Latina enough, or insert your culture enough exactly how you are. And closing out Hispanic Heritage Month, we felt like there was nobody better to bring on the podcast.
Yes.
So, without further ado and Scooby-Doos, please welcome Denise Soler Cox to our podcast.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Empaths Anonymous podcast. Today, we have a very, very lovely guest we are honored to have on, and that is Miss Denise Soler Cox. And she is an award-winning activist filmmaker, top podcaster, sought-after international speaker, and the founder of Project Ẽnye, who uses her experience to produce inspiring content that sparks meaningful and transformative dialogue. Denise has been invited to speak on over 400 stages, including 2 TED Talks, our favorite, and has worked with some of the world's most recognized brands and media outlets like NBC Nightly News, Forbes.com, CNN, and Telemundo. Welcome to the podcast, Denise.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
We're so excited to have you. We have been counting down. We loved watching the film, which we'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, we're so excited to have you. And what's in your cup today?
Oh my gosh, I'm drinking water because it's so dry in Colorado. So I have the Stanley Cup filled up to the top because I can't get enough water today. The weather is changing and it's just all of a sudden got cold and dry. So how about you?
Yeah, I have coffee. I have just an oat milk latte. Just keeping it simple today.
I got my little customized. It was a gift. It says Mama on it.
Oh, I love that.
Same iced coffee, trying to stay caffeinated. I work with middle schoolers, so I need it. But yeah, same for us here. It was starting to get that nice fall weather. It was cooling down, but California does what she wants to do. And so now it's 100 degrees again this week. And so it's trying to stay cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa. Not the vibe for October. Not at all.
Not at all.
I'm sure it feels a lot more like fall where you're at.
Definitely.
That's awesome. And then what's in your life cup, what we like to call it? How are you showing up today?
Well, what a great question. I mean, so basically how I'm showing up is today was a content day. So I am just feverishly creating content for a new course that I'm launching in a few weeks and a new brand that I'm launching this fall and winter. So with that comes so many details, so many emails, so many descriptions, so many paragraphs. And so just been making content all day. That's what I've been doing.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a beast. Tough. Well, thank you for sharing your time with us here. I know that that's tiring after a while.
No, this is the cherry on top to my day. I've been super excited to meet both of you.
Oh, good. Yay, that makes us so happy. We'd never know, like, the anxious is a little bit nervous, but like mostly excited, because for the most part, you never really know who you're going to see on the other side of the screen. You don't really know the energy that you're going to meet. So we really loved watching the film beforehand, and we were crying and cursing and
like, oh, me too, I feel that too.
Yes, yeah, it was a lot of like really heavy moments of resonation. And then both my parents actually ended up coming down like in the middle, and they're like, what are you watching? And I'm like, I'll send it to you. Yeah, so it was great. Awesome. So now we have a couple of viewers in the house, but we wanted to ask you this overall theme, right? The feeling that keeps coming up. What is being, air quotes here, Latina enough? It's something that Christina and I talk about a lot, as it's something that, like we said, we resonate with deeply, being 2 brown girls. Christina not being Latina, but that feeling can be really felt throughout a lot of different communities and throughout a lot of different ethnicities. And so we wanted to know, where do you think that this feeling of being enough of something for everyone else comes from?
Yeah. So the lens that I look at this through is definitely through the lens of the film. And so for me, it was all sparked the night when I was out with a bunch of friends at a bar. And I always make a joke like, mostly people make bad decisions at bars. And that night I made a good decision.
Yeah.
And it was significant because we were all talking about our Latinidad and just talking about things having to do with our Latinidad. So like food, music, all kinds of stuff. And then someone reaches over and he said, have you ever felt like you weren't Latino enough? And so that was the first time I'd ever like contemplated that. I would say like consciously, because I think for a lot of us, especially people younger than us, like my girls, when they were in elementary school, let's say, they're not contemplating their enoughness, but they're definitely experiencing it. And I think the crux of it is when you feel like you're in the liminal space of not feeling connected to parts of your identity, or in my case, not feeling Puerto Rican enough, and then being raised in the States and not feeling American enough. And so that's my story and the story of so many other people, millions and millions of people, and our story, Danny, right? And then where it intersects with Christina's story maybe is because it's also the story of imposter syndrome and feeling like I'm not confident enough, or a huge one for women, I'm not qualified enough, right? That's a big one, or deserving enough. And so it lives there. And that's why it seems to transcend like from an ethnic group, from our ethnic group, then to just kind of everyone, right? But mostly women. And so for me, I think it seems like an enoughness conversation, but it's really a belonging conversation too.
I like that.
Right. Yeah. I thought about that a lot. And what's funny, I told Christina before we started the interview that a lot of the time when I don't know what to listen to, I'll go into my Spotify and go into the songs that I've liked just over the course of time that I've had my account, which is a long time. And I will just shuffle my liked songs. And so this song by Miguel came up called What's Normal Anyway. And I know the song. I'm very familiar. It's one of my favorite albums of his. But the first lyric is he is not Black enough for the Black community, but he's not Latino enough for the Latino community because he's mixed. I think he speaks several different languages: Spanish, Portuguese, English. Wow. And so I was like, okay, of all songs to come up on my shuffle, I'm like, I hear you, universe. Thank you very much for the sign. And so it really just reaches so many different people, that feeling or that lack of feeling of belonging in this community that's supposed to be yours and you're supposed to hold on to it. And then the people in that very community are like, but not you.
Yeah. That's the worst to me, is anyone gatekeeping an identity that is ours. To me, it's like the snake eating its tail. It's like a cannibalistic kind of behavior. And so it's the hardest thing because I'm up close and personal for the last 8 years I've been on. I always say I've been on tour for the last 8 years, but really I've been going to the places that have invited me to screen my film and speak about what I've learned about belonging. And you'd be so surprised how many people stand in front of me after I get off a stage and they're just crying. And they're like, I've never felt like I belonged. I've always felt, and then they'll talk about a friend, a neighbor, a cousin, a parent, someone that's part of their ethnic group, right? Telling them, and that's really painful. And so I kind of get to witness the results of that judgment. And so it fuels my work.
Right. Because you know that there's so many people that exist that have never really heard it spelled out this way, or maybe saw it envisioned this way, that they can see it in the film and they're like, oh, wow, this is what this is. That's a lot of what Project Ẽnye is the realization that it's even happening in the first place. Kind of like what happened with you at the party.
Yep. Very much so.
Yeah. So we loved how just honest and vulnerable you are in the film. There's times when you're very emotional and I'm like, oh, she's one of us. Because we're sitting there like trying not to cry. I mean, as the name of the podcast suggests, we are deep feelers. We feel things really deeply. So I related to you in that way because I'm like, I would probably tear up and have a hard time expressing these things, especially because it seemed like in one of the scenes you kind of had a light bulb moment. And how do you process those feelings like while you're on camera and really having to speak to it? Which leads me into this feeling of imposter syndrome. What have you noticed about yourself over the last, as you said, 8 years that has helped you overcome this feeling of imposter syndrome?
Yeah. I have a strange relationship with imposter syndrome. I will say in the 17 years between the time that I had the idea in the late 90s And the time that I started working on it, when I was in my early 40s, the film, so 17 years had passed, I didn't experience a whole lot of imposter syndrome because I wasn't really trying to be anything or do anything significant. I wasn't stretching myself. So I wasn't experiencing those feelings of who am I and how could I, I don't have this and that and the other. Like for 17 years, all I ever wanted to do was to make this movie. That's what I wanted to do. And so everything else, I'm not going to say it was easy, but I definitely didn't ever doubt myself to the degree that I doubted myself when I started making the film throughout the entire time that we were in production, certainly after being on the road, getting invited to speak on all of these stages and really being called to be what I'm capable of being. And when I say that, I mean the people we love, we can really see them and all their glory and all their talents. And if you're a parent, you can really see what your children have, like their strengths. And it's so hard to see that ourselves. And so I was feeling this sense from the community, and they were relating to me as this contributor of something really significant and healing for them, right? And I was feeling myself needing to show up, right, for that incredible listening. When people listen with respect and they expect to hear something profound and they want you to say your opinion and share it because they believe it could heal people. And so I experienced incredible imposter syndrome around that time because I was like, who am I? I just made this movie, right? Except for that doesn't make sense. Like I made a lot of sacrifices to make the movie. I did a lot of stuff. Yet I still had the very human emotion of imposter syndrome. And so the more successful I get, the more opportunities come my way, the bigger stages that come into my life, the louder that voice gets. And so for me, even though in some of my copy, I'll say, get over it, really. But for me, I just let it come along for the ride. So I've made peace with it. And I'm like, okay, here we go. I'm not going to do this. So you can come.
Right.
I'll invite you to sit next to me, but I'm driving this car and I'm willing to feel as uncomfortable as I need to feel for however long I feel uncomfortable. But I'm not going to stop because I feel the pull and expectation of, in all the best ways, of a community that really does resonate with my message and they want to hear it. And so I want to be able to rise to the occasion and give it to them. And to anyone who's listening that's like, wow, that's so great for her, except for this applies to everybody. We all have some gift to give. And the thing is, in the giving of it is so much doubt. And so that I think that that's part of it. And what there is for us to do as humans is say, I'm going to give this gift anyway, because I have so much, right? So does that make any sense at all?
Oh, it
totally.
does. Yeah. Having that voice as the passenger.
Yeah. We talk about it a lot. And one thing that I always tell myself is, what would happen if I don't do the thing that I'm called to do? Won't that be so much worse than letting that little voice win?
Yes. Yep. I mean, really, it's like robbing other people. It's like taking food right before they're going to put it in their mouth. Like we're nourishing people with the gifts that we have. And it makes each and every one of us special. And so I wonder sometimes if life is just about learning how to live with that voice and doing stuff anyway and contributing what we're here to do anyway. I don't know a single person being honest about their journey who doesn't struggle with this.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's refreshing to hear your transparency, because I would almost expect, like you said, you've been on this journey. It was 17 years before you started, and now you've been on the journey for 8 years. It's refreshing to hear you say, hey, I still struggle with this all of the time, because some of the things that we struggle with, our insecurities, the doubts, they're not necessarily ever going to leave. You can overcome them. You can find ways to cope with them and have your tools so that you can feel your best you, so that you can go out on the stage or get in front of the camera and do the thing that you're supposed to do. But those voices may always be there, and that's okay. Just make them your friend.
Yep. Exactly. Definitely easier said than done. And I think more and more people, a lot of people will notice that I am transparent about that. And I really think that I feel like we should have a call to arms. Let's actually all be honest, especially for other women. We have so much ground to cover still. We have so many things that we're dealing with, like the pay gap, and just there's so many issues that we're still dealing with as a group, right? Let's stop gatekeeping information and pretending that we don't feel things when we do. I'm not going to win any prizes if I lie to you about that. If anything, I would lose authentic relationships that I have, because that's me. One of the things that people say about me a lot is like, wow, she reminded me of, or you remind me of my best friend or of my favorite cousin or my favorite Thea or something like that. And to me, that's like a huge compliment, because we should all be so connected with people that have won the battle over these things and that are normal about it. So then we know we can do the same.
Right. It's almost like you have this idea of someone who reaches this certain level in their career or has been offered X amount of opportunities, and all of a sudden they have these accolades and all these invitations to go here and there. And you think, oh, well, they've got it figured out. They've got the number. They have quieted all those voices. And as a matter of fact, those voices don't exist for them because the opportunities have proved to them that they don't need to listen to those voices. But that attitude of bringing those voices along the ride with you as like teachers and just reminders almost that you never thought that you could be where you were even just 1 year ago from right now. So it's like we spoke about this earlier, is really feeling that gratitude and really feeling that thankfulness, even though it's a word that gets overused and overused. It's very important to actually get grounded in that.
Absolutely. I get the overuse, and I also get how critically important it is. There is no greater peace giver in my life than my grateful practice every morning. And when I get stuck, I have multiple practices, and they're all about feeling grateful. So we're on the same page with that one.
Right. You get in your head a lot and you can feel like, why am I here? What am I doing this for? I'm exhausted. Until you start to like, until you, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to take a nap for a whole year. But then you have to remind yourself of the things that exist outside of yourself, right? It's a much bigger picture than what it is that we're going through in that moment, which are still valid. We always validate feelings here on this podcast.
Piggybacking. Oh yeah. What would we be if we didn't? Piggybacking off of this conversation, what would you say to the Denise the night after you went to the bar with your friends? Is there anything that you would tell that Denise being where you are now?
Ooh, I just got the chills. I try very hard to not indulge my regrets. And so because of that, I have decided I don't want to change anything about what happened. If I'm going to live a life where I don't, and it's going to make me emotional because this is like a really big thing for me. If I'm going to decide I'm not going to regret anything, then that means I have to accept all of it in the exact order that it happened, right? And so given that, I would probably, if I could send her a little telegram, I don't know if we all feel like this, but from time to time, I've spoken to psychics and astrologers and tarot card readers, and I'm like, just tell me it all works out. That's what I want to know. Does it work out, right? Is this going to work out, and what have you? And I was told by a psychic astrologer right around the time that I had the idea for the film, when I was 26, that I would see major success later on in life. And up until then, I would struggle quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I really struggled a lot in my mind because I was so conflicted because I wasn't doing what I felt like I was here to do, right? But if I could tell her anything, I would tell her it totally works out, girl. Like it works out beyond your wildest dreams, but what I'm not sure of is would my 26-year-old self believed me? And so fast forward to now and to our present day selves, would we believe the truth if we heard it? And would we hear it as the truth? It's a really interesting question, especially when I'm sure fellow empaths, you probably get psychic hits about stuff or like intuitive hits, right? I mean, I've never talked about this on a podcast, but I certainly get those. And we're just so dialed in.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't trust them, but they always happen the way that it felt like it was going to happen, right? I knew this was going to be a thing, or I had a sense that this is what was going to happen, or just all sorts of things. And so in many ways, is that the truth? Is that like another timeline, as people say? Because so that's just an interesting philosophical question. And I guess I'd like to believe that I would believe the truth, especially if I knew it was wrapped in something really awesome, like it works out beyond your dream, because for me, I didn't think much past finishing the film because I never imagined that I could actually finish it or that this actually really could happen. I gave myself the rest of my life to work on it because I was that clueless about making movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of, I think that's one of the more beautiful things about creating and being in that element and being in that creative mind is that knowing that it never has to end and that it can always snowball on top of the last thing, on top of the last thing. And then now you're here where you get to release other things that are within that creative world. And so even now, thinking back to 26-year-old Denise, you're kind of like, oh my gosh, it's like you make the film and like the list keeps going. So that is definitely something that we talk about a lot because we feel like starting a podcast and going from 0 to 1,000 has been such a journey, has been such an experience, and just constant conversations back and forth about what's working, what's not working. Did we do this wrong? Are we doing this wrong?
Right.
At that point, it's like, oh,
yeah,
it's deep breath moment.
And getting, like you said, getting those downloads, or we're both individually, seeing these other visions. I mean, I feel really connected to you now. I feel like we are on the same wavelength with that, but it's like we'll get different downloads and then we'll share them like, oh my gosh, well, like I saw this vision and like I have this idea and I would love to build this and build that. And so it's hard being at the starting point and envisioning all of this for yourself and then being like, oh, but can I even do that?
Right.
What do I have to say?
Who am I?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And having to constantly, like you said, not necessarily silence that voice or shame that voice, but be like, you know what? We're going to hold hands and we're going to get through it. And let's just take it one step at a time because it's great that you're a dreamer. You have to take the steps.
Yeah.
Right. Very interesting.
I know. I love that you shared that because I'm like, okay.
Yeah, a lot of people get a little bit like fearful or unsure, like the uncertainty about sharing like certain things when it comes to spirituality or clairvoyance or things like that. But we are all about the woo-woos as Brujeria City over here. Like we are always going to talk about the witchy poos. We have to really actually suppress a lot of the time when we want to talk about astrology and all the witchiness of it. I love it. I love the occult. I've loved it for a long time.
Same.
And it's never really scared me. It's always just been very interesting to me. And I feel like it just speaks to indigenous roots and just really, really being back at that grounded place.
Yes.
So we can go on with that one forever.
Yeah,
so maybe a
totally.
different conversation for a different day. But you do.
Can I actually add one thing to that?
Yes.
Because here's what's happened with me is when I was during that 17 years, I was so disconnected from what I was like, quote unquote, supposed to be doing. When really what I call those 17 years was my becoming. Like I was becoming who I needed to be. The girl that had the idea at 26 is definitely not the woman that decided, come hell or high water, I will do this until I die. I will give myself the rest of my life. I was so deeply committed to it, right? Totally different person. And the 17 years, there was nothing wrong with it. But because I spent so much of it disconnected from like my purpose, I wasn't feeling very intuitive, or that part of me just wasn't developed. The things that were the feelings, the intuition, the feeling in your body when you just know and have certainty, that would swoosh in and out of my body. And I would wonder what just happened. Like, I don't get that. But it showed up in relationships, in romantic relationships. A lot of times ended up with men that weren't the right match or friends that weren't the right match, right? And now that I'm deeply in my purpose, and this actually started when I started working on the film to now, and it's just gotten more and more intense, I've become more and more discerning because I am so in touch with my body and my body's reaction to the alignment or the lack thereof, right? That it's almost like the channel has opened wide for me. And so sometimes I do feel confused about a step, but very rarely do I get confused about relationships Or if I do, you just kind of take a step back. It's just so different. And so the point I'm making is the more aligned you are with what you're supposed to be doing, the higher that intuition seems to get, or the more intense or the clearer you will feel. Because a lot of people are just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do next. I need to know the steps. Well, guess what? Get aligned and you will know what steps to take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those things just start to present themselves to you automatically, as long as you continue on that path of knowing what is alignment versus what is not, knowing what is for you versus what is not. I mean, we're in the depths of it right now.
We're in the trenches.
Learning that it's a hard lesson, especially when you feel like it's over and over and over and over again, to when finally you're just like, okay, I get it now. And like, I don't really want to learn it again. Like, I don't want to have to experience the lesson to learn it again. I already know what that is. And so now it's just like, okay, the trudge forward gets more real.
Because those other things fall away, especially like with what you said with relationships and friendships. It's like, that's been over the last year or two. It's been like, oh, aha, okay, I get it. We're not going back there again.
Right. Because you hold on for so long. You hold on to these ideas of a person that you think is supposed to be for you in a friendship, in a romantic relationship, until you tap right back into that intuition and that gut feeling, which was there all along, but she just got really quiet. And so that's when you finally get to make that choice for yourself to move past it, because you're just like, okay, this has to be the last time that I experience this fill in the blank feeling.
Yes, so relatable. But are you both into human design at all?
I know a little bit, like I know what I am, but I don't know what all the numbers mean and all of that kind of stuff. I'm a generator. What are you?
I'm a generator too.
Nice.
And it's actually, see, now we're just going to go here because if you don't mind, because this is like my favorite thing. So in my human design chart, actually, I know just enough to be dangerous. I don't know like enough to charge for readings, but it's actually in my human design chart what I do, which is kind of freaky deaky because like my conscious sun is like someone who's here to transform the way that people see things. And it's like of all the numbers of all the things, and then there's all these other kind of things in my chart that kind of point to what excites me and what I believe I'm here to do. And at some point was afraid to say that out loud. And I know a lot of people sometimes will, like, well, I feel like I'm here to change the world. I'm here to transform things. And they feel like it sounds corny or like maybe too big or for what they think that they could possibly do, or fill in the blank, right? What's odd is when I saw my chart and did some research, got some books, I couldn't believe it. Or actually I could, right? Made sense. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to start telling people I'm here for this. And I believe everyone is here for a reason too.
Right. I think I did it once and I forgot mine.
Yeah. I mean, just from knowing you, I feel like you might be a projector, but I'm not totally sure because you also are very, I'm here to get shit done.
Yeah, I do have to get
kind of generator
done. I have
attitude.
a Capricorn stellium, so.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm very intense about my work.
I love it. I love it. But you know what? I will say this. I am exactly this way. I'm this way on a podcast. I'm this way if you met me at the supermarket. I'm this exact way on stage. I'm this way when I'm speaking with clients. I will say before I started this work, there was a different Denise for all those occasions. And it was exhausting. And I just honestly thought that's how I had to do it and never consciously questioned it. But when I finally started working on the film, right, and then it just snowballed and I realized, wow, like, I don't want to compartmentalize myself anymore. I just want to be exactly this way. And if it doesn't resonate with somebody, we don't have to be friends. It's okay. Right. But I'm just so tired of pretending I'm something else or containing this incredible energy that I have.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. So, it's like, why would I try to diminish that or like put myself in a box in certain environments? It just doesn't feel authentic or real to me. That's why a lot of the time we struggle so much. And the whole premise of the podcast is we struggle to understand why certain people behave certain ways because we can't, like, we physically we're not capable of not showing up to everything as being our 100% self. It feels icky, it feels weird and foreign.
Right.
So we talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
So many
When
things.
people are like, oh, I don't understand how somebody could treat me this way or move about work this way or whatever. And it's like, well, of course we don't understand. We can't understand and we never will. So it's like that radical acceptance of you do you, I'll do me. We don't have to like be the best of friends. And that's totally okay. I'm not for everyone, but I am for me.
Yes.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah. A part of the film that was honestly for me personally heartbreaking and also aligned with my journey very much was when you moved outside of the city. So you moved to Westchester and then your mom's name changed. She became Dolores, right? Remind me of her nickname again.
Her nickname is Lolin, Lolin. That's her nickname.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Lolin.
See, so my mom's nickname is Nonis. What's that?
Oh,
We don't know, but it's okay because we call her that anyway, right? So it's like growing up, I grew up in San Diego for like the first 10 or 11 years of my life. And then we moved to a suburb of the Inland Empire, Temecula, where we're at now for the last 20 years. And it was a very interesting experience for me. I went from a lot of different schools, but I was at a Catholic school and it was a lot of Filipino and Spanish speaking peers, and my teachers were Black and my teacher was Filipino. And then I came to this place where I was it. And so because I didn't speak Spanish in the environment that I had come from, I wasn't Mexican enough. And because I had moved to this white town where I was like one of 5 brown girls, I was the brown girl, right? I was the token child. I was like, okay, one of 3 brown people in my class. And we just gravitated toward each other, right? You're like, safe space.
Yeah.
Like how you gravitated with some of your neighbors, right? And so you find those safe spaces, but we wanted to ask you about the feeling, right? In that moment, did you understand the small change, but extremely significant change that would have basically a lasting impact?
So here's what's so fascinating, especially having kids. I have 2 daughters, and I think about this a lot. When they get older, what are the conversations we're going to have when they're older, when they start to question some of maybe my behavior or my husband's behavior, right? As adults, and then we'll both be adults. And so for me, I never questioned that. I never outwardly questioned that my mom had a nickname with the family and close friends. All the friends from church in Spanish Harlem, everybody called my mom Loling. Nobody called her Dolores except for if they were meeting her like formally, but I don't have a single memory of that. It wasn't until we moved to Westchester and that's how she would introduce herself. And so it was kind of like the foreign and the familiar, but for me, it just was, right? And so as a kid, you just take everything in and like very unconsciously make different choices. And then when I heard my family they weren't mispronouncing my last name, I thought that that's how it was pronounced. I thought we pronounced it Soler here, and then somewhere else they pronounced it Soler. And I just didn't question. We do this also as adults, and this is things I ponder, right? Is what are the things that are going on in my life that I don't question and I just completely accept as is. And it's the waking up that kind of gives us like clarity and choice and agency. And so, yes, these things totally affected me. And they were my accepted reality until I moved to Miami. And this part isn't in the film. And I very rarely share this story, but I had moved down to Miami and I remember making a phone call to somebody, and the person that answered the phone asked for my name, my full name. And when I said Soler, she said, "Excuse me," in Spanish. And she just read me the riot act about how if I don't pronounce my name right, that's like the beginning of the end. And if I'm not proud of my culture, like if I don't pronounce it right, then I'm not proud of my culture. And then what happens then? Then we lose our Latinidad, and like that can't happen. So pronounce your name right, right? And so I was like, okay. And for me, I was like, thank you. And I forever pronounced it correctly from that point on. And it's actually the reason why I changed my maiden name, Soler, to my legal middle name after I got married. Because I'm like, oh my God, I'm marrying a gringo. No, people already don't know I'm Latina. Like I pass, right? So easily I can't lose my name. And so I actually legally changed it. And then also I changed it because I wanted it to be said. I wanted to make up for lost time. I wanted people to ask me how it was pronounced because I wanted to inspire other people to pronounce their names correctly, not because I care about phonetics, but because I do care about claiming our identity. And sometimes when we ignore parts of ourselves, we discount the little things. So yeah, that was a huge moment for me. And it wasn't until, that moment in Miami that I ever really questioned it at all.
Right. As children, we're along for the ride. We're like, this is happening now, and this is happening now, and now this is happening. Those things don't really come to the surface until much later on in life. It was a really touching moment for sure, because I was like, it's my exact experience. There weren't any really name changes involved, but there were a lot of voicemails left on the home phone with just complete butcherings. The worst pronunciation. I'm like, just sound it out. It's a couple of syllables. We can all do it together. To this day, I think I still call my brother one of the variations of the last name. I think one time we got Lama Burgo, and I'm like, not it.
Oh my gosh! Wait, what's the name?
It's La Madrid.
Are you serious? And that they would mess that up?
Yes, often.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, even to this day, I see people like stare at it, and I'm like, you can do it. You can do it.
It really is pronounced the way that you would think.
Yes,
so it's pretty
exactly
easy.
the way the letters sound. Every single one makes that exact sound.
That is hilarious.
Yeah. I'm royalty somewhere in Spain. I know it.
That's great.
Yeah. So as we've been talking about all throughout this, being on a healing journey, showing up for your purpose, sharing your truth, it always comes with this fine line of, okay, what's safe to share and what might hurt somebody's feelings who I love. And I think you spoke to that in the film a little bit. How did you get yourself over that hurdle? And did the film and the work that you do open up any important conversations with your mom or with any family members that you may not have had prior to the film coming out?
Yeah. So such an important thing to examine. And also one of those things that it's like we're kind of asleep until we're not, right? And so I'm sure you're probably referring to the scene in the film. I could not stand that scene. Just so you know, I wanted to cut that scene. There were a handful of scenes I wanted to cut. That was one of them. I was like, this is absolutely not going in the film, right? And so that was like a really, that felt at the time like a huge risk for me. But in any case, a lot of people were asking me like, why were you afraid of what they would think? Because they just didn't get it. And then some people watched it and they're like, oh my God, I totally get it. Like I could see why you were so concerned, right? But the thing is that it begs the question, where does my story begin and end and someone else's begin and end, right? How do families, like when we're trying to tell stories, what consideration do we give? Where's the line between where mine ends and someone else begins? And what's my story to tell? What's not my story to tell? And so I had a lot of thinking to do about that. And that's why the scene is in the film, because I realized it's okay for me to show me grappling with how much I'm considering my family's feelings, because it's important to see how painful that is for someone, right? And also for me, I can consider how they feel, but I can also own my own story. And so for me, it wasn't necessarily what it did for my extended relationships, but what it did for my own confidence in owning my own narrative and being able to say, yeah, guess what? If you want to write a book or make a movie or tell a story and I'm a peripheral character, go for it, right? I hope that you would honor and respect my role or whatever, but we're all entitled to tell our story. And I don't, of course, think it's okay to be malicious or hurtful on purpose, right? But no one's feelings were hurt. It's interesting. Not a single person in my family came up to me and said, dude, that was really hurtful. If they didn't do that, and for me, I really realized, because I contemplated that a lot, just like idea, where does my story end and someone's begin? What's the limit of me now, since I'm a professional storyteller, right? Because I still tell stories on stage now. I'm writing a book, telling more stories. And so it really helped me own my narrative and understand where those guardrails are and understand what's my story to tell. There's quite a bit that we all could tell. It's an interesting thing to think about and ponder, but it gave me a sense of agency over my own narrative, which was the most important thing.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that maybe it could be an empath thing or a deep feeler type of thing of we anticipate the other people are going to be hurt. So then we kind of silence ourselves, or we have this internal battle when, like you said, on the outside, like they may not be offended at all, but that responsibility that we sometimes take on for other people's feelings is sometimes like, I think that showing that moment in the film for me was really impactful because I'm like, oh my gosh, she goes through that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I am always conscious of, like you said, what is for me to speak about, what is safe for me to share, and what is just something that needs to be part of the other person's story or just needs to be kept for just me in my personal life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was gonna say when you're a public person, and I kind of feel like that's an expired kind of saying because people that are making content, we're all in many ways public, right? And so I think it
Mhm.
begs the question or the examination of what responsibility do I have to someone else's narrative and the way that I tell it, so that I'm just taking responsibility for my feelings, how I responded, knowing that multiple things could be true at once. How do I take responsibility for my own truth and for my own interpretation? And oftentimes it leads to a more responsible telling of the story, not a
Yeah.
less responsible. Like when we think about people being disrespectful in that regard, we think about them trampling over people's feelings because those things haven't been considered. What's mine to tell? And then if I'm going to take it, how can I take responsibility for this conversation and for the feelings I'm experiencing, right? And then if we can walk that line, then there's a lot of freedom. But if we never contemplate it at all, that's when I think we're like a bull in a china shop, you know? So that's where I think empaths, we have superpowers. And for any empaths that are listening, it's okay to be afraid and to take the tip to just know taking responsibility for your feelings means you can't say stuff like, they made me feel that way. No, it has to be, I was triggered and felt this way.
Mm-hmm.
Totally
Yeah.
different, right?
Yeah. And the sentence framing, like the framework of saying that, especially within a conversation between two people, is really important because you can be triggered by so many things in another person or their behaviors. And so oftentimes when her and I are speaking to one another, two highly sensitive people speaking to one another, and it's like, I don't want to hurt your feelings. I really don't want to hurt your feelings. And both of us know that about one another. So it's like we don't have to preface, but we do anyway. And it's honestly one of the more beautiful parts about having a relationship with someone who shares that sensitivity, but we both express it in very different ways also. So for her, she's like a very outwardly tearful, can cry at the drop of a hat. And for me, I'm a processor. I internalize things, but it doesn't mean that we're feeling any less. I'm not feeling less than her. So it's something we talk about a lot, how different, like feelings can look different for so many different people. And you can still be a highly sensitive person and consider someone else when you are telling a personal story. So I love that. And again, I agree with Christina. It was very important to be left in. So we're glad that you did. And yeah, I feel like we could sit on the green velvet couch and talk all day, but we did want to give you some time to discuss. You mentioned your book that's coming out, and is it a program? Correct me if I'm wrong. High Quality Human.
Actually, no. So my book is called What Will They Say? And it's really about, and it's actually kind of related to what we're talking about. And it's about that feeling of not wanting to do something or say something or be something because you're concerned with other people and what they'll say. And so there's a saying in Spanish, lo que dirán. And it's like, you know, when people just say things, right? And so we're raised to consider this anonymous group of people and what they might think of us or say about us. What inspired the book was after the screenings of my film and the keynotes that I give, people often will wait and want to say hi and take a selfie. And at every single event, women, at least one or two at each of the events, would tell me a secret. And I didn't at first understand it because I felt like I had left my secrets out of the film. Some of the things that I shared in the film were difficult, but they weren't secret, right? There was definitely a line with which I said I would not cross with my secrets, not anybody else's, my own. But yeah, these women were telling me their secrets. And I didn't feel burdened by the telling of it. I just felt like I didn't understand why it kept happening. And oftentimes the women would say, "You're the first person I've told this to, and I just feel like I need to tell you." And it was something horrible that happened to them. And so after about 40 times, I realized I needed to do something about it. And I felt like I was receiving a message, going back to what we were saying before, and realized that for some people that are watching my film, something is stirring inside them that wants to live a bigger life, wants to pursue something really big. Because what they would say is, I would love to make a movie or write a book or start a business or start a podcast or move to another city or just do these really big things, right? These really big dreams. But then they would tell me this horrible thing that happened and try to convince me that they were broken and that they could never have this life that they imagined, that they wanted, right? And that also breaks my heart.
Yeah.
And so I thought, wow, I need to do something about this. This has happened now for over 400 times because it happens every single time. I'm in person. It never happens ever in a virtual event, but always happens in a in-person event. But in any case, the book is for Latinas. And the thing is, some people are like, well, is it for other women too? Absolutely. It's for anyone that feels like they had to, that they feels like they're broken for some reason and that they can't possibly transcend that perceived brokenness and live a life that they really want because they're holding on to this horrible secret. So that's the book. And then High Quality Human is actually my response to the loneliness epidemic. And so another thing that pops up with my work, since I'm constantly talking about belonging and identity, people will come up to me and they'll share, I've never felt like anyone understood me. You know, the more intersections someone has as part of their identity, the higher the likelihood is that they're going to feel really alone, right? That's why we have to get out of the darkness and talk about these things. So they tell me, and while I was on the road and just meeting the most extraordinary people, because I had decided to make this film and because I'd made these sacrifices and gone through my own eye of the needle, I felt like I was being presented with the most extraordinary people like ever. And that includes both of you. I love this conversation. I would never have been in it. I would never be in it had I not done that, right? And so for me, I don't take that lightly. So I have an expression for people like you, and I call you high quality humans and people that are interested in having really substantive conversations about things that matter, like loneliness, belonging, identity, and the things that we're talking about today. And so we had these t-shirts made and we've been giving them away to our clients for years with that saying on it. And then on a walk with my husband last year, something just kind of like, I don't know what it was, but I just was like, oh my gosh, I think I need to do this. I think I need to make a brand, build a brand around what it means to be like a high quality human, to help people kind of like pierce through those feelings of loneliness and grab onto a sense of purpose and a code of values that they can resonate with. Because I wrote a manifesto that goes along with it. And it's basically people that care about belonging, that want to champion belonging, people that are the same in the light as they are in the dark, people that speak with love. It could be the empath's manifesto too.
Right? Oh my gosh. Now I'm like, we need a manifesto,
I know.
Christina.
We're so, I feel like this whole conversation was just like meant to be, because I feel like we're so aligned in so many ways with what we're trying to put out into the world, with conversations we're having, the people that we want to call into our lives, and the community that we want to build. So I'm just so grateful. I don't know what told me that day to search up what I searched and find you,
Oh
but I
my
think that it
God.
was meant to be.
For certain. Yes.
Likewise. Yeah, I'm so happy too.
We want to go beyond the surface. We want to really scratch people's brains. And so that does require, when you are on this podcast, to actually be very vulnerable and to share the things, like you said, that maybe you're not used to sharing or you don't normally share in a public setting or a space. But we're here to always listen. That's the biggest thing for us. And so we were having these conversations separately on our own before we even decided to start the podcast. And so we are really just exiting this conversation with so much knowledge and really a lot of gratitude. I can't think of a better word, but I know there's a better word than that.
Gratitude, camaraderie.
Yeah.
I'm just really excited for your book to come out because I definitely want to read it, even though I'm not Latina. I'm
That's
so
okay. That's okay.
excited for this high quality human launch. So I'm definitely going to keep my eye on your socials. And for our feelers, for our listeners, we're going to link everything for you in our show note. But we just wanted to thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything that you shared. Because like Jenny said, it takes bravery to be vulnerable. It's something that we've learned. It's one thing for us to just have these conversations, but to show up with a camera and a microphone, it's not a simple task.
Right.
So we really appreciate everybody who's willing to share like you did today.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, y'all. I mean, seriously,
What can you say after that?
what can you say? What can you say after such a beautiful conversation, after someone who has been very honest and shares things that they've never shared with anyone else before? That is an honor to be able to feel like this is that safe of a space. And that's literally all we've ever wanted to create and all we've ever wanted to cultivate is a place where it's warm and welcoming and judgment free and just a loving environment where people can share the intimate parts of themselves within reason. And so, first of all, what you need to do right now is pause us and click the link to her documentary, Project Ẽnye. It was released some time ago, but still has, like we talked about, this immense impact, even if you're not Latina.
So relevant.
Yes.
No matter how old. It could be 20 years old. The content was still relevant.
Yeah, because there's always going to be people that are experiencing these feelings. And on top of that, not being able to identify what those are, just knowing that you have this experience and not being able to understand why. And so I think it was so enlightening. Again, just I'm beside myself.
Yeah.
And thankful.
Basically, if you feel other in any kind of way, you're going to enjoy her film. And she has exciting new projects coming up that we are so excited to support. So please give her a follow. Please say hello. I mean, I think we say this a lot, but when you're a content creator and on the other side of it, you realize how much it means when somebody just gives you a simple, hey, I heard you on this podcast, loved it, or interacts with your content in any kind of way. So please go do that if you feel so led. Just let her know, hey, we heard you on Empaths Anonymous, loved the interview, thanks for what you shared. And if you resonated with something, let her know. And also let us know, because we do want to talk to you.
I want to talk to you.
I am thrilled, grateful. Younger Christina is blown away that we are having these kinds of conversations with these amazing, open, heart-led women on our podcast. It's like more than I could have imagined or dreamed. So that's how I feel after that. It's great to have a conversation with someone on the podcast and be like, wow, like they have a lot of knowledge and a lot of good things to say, but to connect with somebody.
Yeah, that's true.
We've said this about several of our guests, that like now I just feel like they're a friend. And there are several of our guests that I check in with, like, oh, hey, I saw this is going on in your life. Hope you're okay. One of our guests, Nizreen, her family lives in Lebanon. So sending her love to Lebanon and trying to be a good ally in that kind of way. Denise is someone who I would be really excited to continue to connect with, to meet with. And you guys, there is a California Women's Conference. The California Conference for Women that is coming up in February that she will be at. Simone Biles will be there. Brittany Griner will be there. And honestly, we're trying to be there. So we would love to see you there.
Yeah, it's in Northern California in San Jose, February of next year. However, they do have a podcast. And we will link that in the show notes as well. We're going to have lots of links for you guys this episode. So, yeah, I think that about wraps it up for us.
It really does. I'm ready to like Tinkerbell dance my way out of this room and into another room of amazing women that I'm going to talk to in a second.
That's true. Yeah. The connection, the feelings of connection that I'm getting, and the fact that we're getting it in like different areas of both of our lives. Like we do so much together.
Yeah.
And we honor and value our alone time. Like I love this bitch to death. Like I'll ride for this bitch. But we are both very much people who are like, I'm going to go be by myself. And we love that because we're both that way. Yeah. And so if she needs to be by herself, I'm like, perfect. Me the
too.
fuck too.
Odds are, me too.
Yeah. And so I just love how that's showing up in like different areas of our lives.
For both of us.
And then we still get to come back and experience it together.
Yeah.
Snaps all day, y'all.
Snaps for friend.
We love ya. If you made it to the end of this episode on YouTube, comment a...
Do they have a snap emoji?
Yes.
Comment the snap emoji.
Snap emoji. Because we were just... Snaps for Denise. Snaps for Denise. We love her. We love you. We love us. See you next time.
Love, love, love.